Purdue and Maryland. And Tricky, we'll let you comment on this one first. Purdue wins 67-53. Maryland obviously had a fantastic winning streak at home. What was it, 9 games, 19 games, something like that, Tricky?
I think it was matters, sir. Yes, 19 game home winning streak, which is no more. Uh, Hats off to Matt Painter and the boys. When I did get together with Frank and Dylan, as I mentioned earlier, I laid out the way that we could easily lose the game, and it was exactly what we did. I mentioned the insistency on shooting 3-pointers when you don't have the ability to make them, the incessant double teaming of Edey when you're not going to stop him anyway, and thus opening up the outside shot, which they certainly capitalized on. I was the only Turtlehead not in attendance. Turtleheads Dave Lee and Jordan were there, and our very own NIL sponsored athlete. Is there any other podcasts out there on the Big Banner Network have NIL contracts with athletes? We had Shippensburg University field hockey star Hannah White as a special guest of the Turtleheads in attendance. Yes, go Raiders. Ship happens, but we are also the number one podcast for supporting small schools here at the Turtleheads. But they all were obviously very disappointed. Turtlehead Dave said that Willard looked disinterested and had erratic substitution patterns. If you're disinterested when you're going up against the number one team in the nation, I understand not wanting to look towards one particular player on the court, but you could at least, look at your team and how they're getting drubbed out there. Turtlehead Jordan said, like I mentioned earlier, the offense didn't have any rhythm at all. It was just haphazard, and that the Purdue passing game was on point. Like I said, all we had to do was stop with the double team, but every time we did, they took perfect advantage of that.
Oh,
Unfortunately, Jordan believes that Mark Turgeon tendencies. So we're really worried about our coaching. As my good friend Connor Berry may have learned this week, one of my big things is firing coaches. I want to fire everybody. I've tried to fire Jordan from the Turtleheads, and he runs the podcast. But I've been calling for Willard all season because of what we saw last night. He seems to let the game get away from him. And Turtlehead Jordan was wondering if maybe Gary Williams, who we don't like to mention often, but he did win a national championship for the University of Maryland, the last team that is currently in the Big Ten to win a national championship in basketball. Little known fact. But did he set the bar too high that these guys that have come in after him in Turgeon and Willard just seem lost? I mean, they seem to be decent recruiters, but they can't X and O. And if you want to be paid to be a recruiter, fine. But if you can't produce on the court, then what is the point? So, again, as I said earlier, we're still going to win the Big Ten tournament, still going to march all the way to the national championship. But in order to do so, we're going to have to learn from our loss last night and talk about being a one-man show. We put it all on Jahmir's back while Juju was so concerned with defending Edey that he never even scored, barely showed up in the stat line. And let's hope it was our worst game and Westel's best game. And the Shellbacks will prevail in the end. See you in the Final Four.
There we go. This is the launching pad that Maryland needs to get
Oh,
there.
absolutely. Look out, Minnesota. And shout out to the Golden Gophers, though. They actually have a really good team, but they're just not ready for the amphibious buzzsaw that they're going to face, because if we're not fired up after last night, then we might as well just cancel the rest of the season, because it's definitely time for a prove it game, or else I'll personally fire Willie.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Gabriel, I don't know if you can top any of that, but what were your thoughts on the Purdue win over the Shellbacks last
I
night?
sure can't, but we're going to attempt to anyway. Now, well, the thing about Purdue is, and right, new guy. All he's about to try to do a hot take. No, is it weird if I think yesterday was asked in the Slack channel, like, what do you think about the Big Ten? A, I think the Big Ten is down, and B, I really think Purdue's going to struggle to make the Final Four this year, and here's why. For teams that, first of all, I 100% agree with Tricky. Like for teams that choose to double Edey, you're just asking for trouble with the way he kicks out to these 3-point shooters. Like that's going to be a recipe for disaster. But against other comparable athletic big men, I think you're never going to stop, maybe even slow him down. But basically, forcing Edey to be the only one that goes off is the path forward if you're going to beat Purdue. And so I say all that to say, how often is Purdue going to be tested this year in the Big Ten? I really don't see too many big tests. Like if you look at the Big East, stacked. The Pac-12 maybe not as strong. I think the SEC is still a little underrated, and the ACC, maybe not as strong as past years, but still, I think overall those teams are being battle tested at a higher level more consistently than what we're seeing in the Big Ten, where the Big Ten is we have Purdue and then a bunch of, well, are you good? And so I think that's what will kind of make it a little more difficult for Purdue in the long run.
Yeah, it's
If
going to be
I,
interesting to see what
what?
Purdue can do. Oh, go ahead, Tricky.
Sorry, Jr., but
Go ahead.
I just had a rebuttal for Gabriel's final statement. I know that you're new here, but you just said it's Purdue, and is anybody else any good? In the box to my left is a man that probably would argue there's at least one other decent team in the Big Ten. Really, there's only one bad team, and that's Michigan, and everybody knows it. And Juwan
You're
Howard
preaching to
should
me,
be
Tricky.
fired. Oh, yeah. I knew I wouldn't get any argument from you, sir. But no, they're just garbage. And but everybody else is actually pretty decent. Um, and I just hope we don't cannibalize each other, beat each other up, and then have one of these teams go up against some uh, unknown little school from New Jersey somewhere in the first round and embarrass the conference. We can't have that again. So, yeah, I think there are several teams in the Big Ten that, other than the West Ellians, a bunch of rocket jockeys, that have a chance of making their mark for the Big Ten. And I think Illinois right now is the front runner, leader in the clubhouse, if you will, my Terrapins notwithstanding.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. Sonny, you have any thoughts on the Purdue and Maryland game before we finish up with that one?
Not really. I mean, Purdue, I think, I do agree with Gabriel in the sense that they're clearly the class of the conference. Last week, if you had asked me, I genuinely believed that the gap between Purdue and Illinois was a lot closer than the gap between Illinois and whoever the third best team in the conference was. Now things obviously change a little bit. Without our best player, obviously I hope we still continue to play like the last two games without Shannon, but Purdue's just, they're a well-oiled machine. They brought everyone back. They have one of the top coaches in the country. We all have our own opinions on Edey. But it goes without saying he's the best player in college basketball. So that Friday night, I'll be watching. It'll be a fun game to watch. I wish Shannon was going to be there. I think had Shannon been there, things could get really interesting. But they're just a well-oiled machine, unlike the team that they played last night, Maryland, who really is the opposite. And I just wanted to mention, it's really funny. I had Tricky on at the Illini cast when we previewed Illinois and Maryland. And at that point, we ended the episode talking about Maryland basketball. And he had Willard essentially winning Coach of the Year, Maryland winning the national championship. And so now, X amount of months later, to see he's ready to fire the guy. I
think I also had Juju Reese as Player of the Year as well, and that's not looking so hot. But now JR was asking what you thought of the Maryland Purdue game. I think it's like looking at a negative, like a photography negative. We showed you what not to do. We gave you the blueprint. Just make it George Costanza. Just do the opposite, and you should have no trouble at all. We showed you exactly what not to do. Do not follow our example. Do the opposite of what we did, and you'll have the game over right at halftime, I would think.
I mean, historically, Illinois and Purdue have always had some pretty good battles. So, I know it's going to be a good game. Again, Painter and Underwood, in my opinion, the two best coaches currently in the conference. I know they're going to have some game plans up. All I'm saying is it would have been nice to have Shannon there on the court for that battle.
Sonny, you have plenty of horses on your team while they only have the one big donkey. So I think you'll be just fine.
Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.